Yo, it's Spellfire Club time. Welcome to Spellfire Club, where we talk anything and everything Dungeons and Dragons. Now, this is the first meeting of Spellfire Club, and they say your first meeting is your worst meeting, which I don't really understand because that intro was like perfect, really, in almost every way. I don't know how it can be improved, really. But we'll get better over time. So to start out with our first meeting, we're going to roll up a first level character using 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons rules. And 5th edition is sometimes abbreviated number 5 with a little E after it, so 5E. To roll up a character in 5th edition takes a little bit of time, so we're going to chop this up into segments. The first segment is going to deal with ability scores, and to roll those up is pretty easy. You roll 4 6-sided die, you drop the lowest, and you add the remaining 3 together, and that becomes one of your ability scores. You need 6 of them, so you roll 6 times. And when you're done, you assign them based on your class mostly. A little bit based on your race, but mostly based on your class, like a fighter or cleric or a rogue. Once those are assigned, then you figure out the bonuses that you get based on those ability scores, and that's your core of your character. From there, all of your rest of your character's stuff like saving throws and skills and stuff sort of build off of those rolls. And we'll see that kind of stuff in later segments. So without further ado, let's get rolling. Okay, now we're ready to roll up our very first character using the traditional method of rolling 4 6-sided die. Which, if we need 4 6-sided die, I guess we need dice. Let's see, I don't know if I have enough dice here. I might be able to find 4. I'll pick some that are high visibility. If I can find 4 6-sided die in my thing. Let's see here. This one's pretty high vis. And one more. I like my old school dice like I used to play with back in the day. I don't want the brown die. Brown die's not good. Alright, here. This one's pretty good. This green's nice and bright. Alright, cool. So we need 4 6-sided die. 6-sided die is the normal die that you would think of when you think of dice. And die for singular, dice for plural. So we're going to roll 4 of these, and then we're going to write them down on this piece of scratch paper. And after we've rolled 6 of them, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abilities. Once we've rolled 6 of them, then we're going to assign them to the ability based on what kind of character. Oh, but we need to write stuff down, so that we need a pencil. So here's our pencil, and oh wait, I just realized that pencil's not going to work. It doesn't have an eraser. All right, here we go. Yeah. Okay, good. Now we're ready to go. We got our pencil, we got our dice, and we've got our blank sheet of paper, scratch paper. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to write with this pencil right now because you'll be able to see it better if I write with a Sharpie. So, how do you roll 4 6-sided die and drop the lowest and then get your score? Well, that's how you do it. You roll your dice and you add your numbers up. You got a 6, a 2, and a 2. So you have 2 lowest numbers, 2, so you drop one of them. And then you write down what you have left. So it's a 6 and a 6, 12 plus 2 is 14. So our first number, 14, just write that down. You don't have to write it as big, obviously, but I'm just doing that so you can see it. Next, roll again. Oh, I got a 6, a 4, a 1, and a 1. Well, we're not off to the best start. We drop one of the 1s, it's one of the lowest, and we add them up. 6 and 4 is 10, 1 is 11. There we go. So next one. Next character, oh, a 5, a 4, a 3, and a 1, so we drop the 1. So we got a 9 plus 3 is 12. Good. Next one is up. Oh, I wish I kept that 6. Oh, I did keep the 6. A 6, a 6. I got real excited. 3 and a 1 when I saw the 2 6s, but we made 6 and 6 is 12. Oh, we dropped the 1. 6 and 6 is 12, then we get a 3, that's 15. That's not bad. We've got 2 more to go, so we can hope for some nice high rolls. Oh, we didn't get them. A 5 and a 4, not bad. A 2 and a 1. So we'll drop the 1, we get 9 plus 2 is 11. Character's not too bad, a couple nice rolls. 14 and 15 aren't bad. We're hoping for a big one. 18. We didn't get it, but we got close. 16 or 6, 5, 4, and 2. You drop the 2. So you get a 6 and a 5 is 11, plus 4 is 15. 2 15s actually is not too shabby. So now we've gotten our base rolls down for our abilities. We have 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What we need to do now is we need to assign the rolls to the abilities that we want. And at this point, you actually have to make a decision because which abilities get which roll depends mostly on class. So there's 2 things in Dungeons and Dragons that you need to pick when you do your character. One is race, which is like if you're an elf or a human or a gnome or something like that. And then the other one is class. And the class is sort of like your adventurer's profession, like what your adventurer is good at. And those are the classic ones like fighter and wizard, or they have sorcerer now. They also have like a rogue, like it's like a thief or whatnot. And then things like cleric, druid, that kind of stuff. So that's your class. Now, for the roles, the most important thing is what class you want to be, because each class has certain abilities that need to be higher to be the best in their class. And all that stuff's, of course, in the player's handbook. Now, to look at it, in the player's handbook, you can go to the section on classes, which comes right after all the races. And we'll talk about the races, too, because you get some bonuses based on which race you pick. But usually people have an idea of like what they want to be class-wise. Now, here on in the player's handbook is the Chapter 3 is all about the classes. And they list all the classes here on this chart. And this primary ability thing is gives you an idea of what ability you want to assign the highest score to if you're that class, right? So if you're a barbarian, your primary ability should be strength, right? And if you're a cleric, it should be wisdom. And if you're a fighter, it's strength or dexterity. And then to really know which way, how to assign them, usually there's 2 per class. So let's say we decide, let's make a barbarian. And his primary ability is strength. So we'll just flip to the barbarian side. And if you read down through, they give you a little description of the barbarian, some other interesting stuff. And down here, they say quick build. So each section has a quick build. And in this one, they say you can make a barbarian quickly by following these suggestions. First, put your highest ability score in strength, followed by constitution. So I usually just follow them because I know what they're doing. So let's take our super pencil here. And we're gonna kind of lightly write in. Actually, I'm gonna write it off to the side here. My strength score, and I'm gonna pick the 15 for strength. I'm gonna kind of write it off to the side. Now, normally when you're finally done, you're gonna write it in this little circle here. You write a 15 in there. You know what? I'm just gonna write in a circle. I sometimes write them off to the side, but I'll write them in a circle so it makes more sense. So I'm gonna write 15 here for strength in this little circle in the strength thing. Now, the next one they said to use is, and then I'm going to cross it off over here. Whoop, I've used that 15. Then the next thing it says to do is constitution. So I'm going to put a 15 over here for constitution. I'm going to write it in, I kind of did dark, but I should write it in kind of lightly. I crossed that off the list. Then the next thing, for a barbarian, I happen to know, and this is something that you would, if you read the whole barbarian thing before you figured out, you would know. I happen to know that a barbarian gets a special thing, which is unarmored defense. So it says that your armor class, which is normally just 10, if you're a regular character, modified by dexterity, is modified by your dexterity and your constitution, because you're like super tough barbarian. So I know that I probably want my dexterity to be my next highest, so I have a 14 that I'm going to put into dexterity. And I'll explain armor class when we get to it. And now the rest of these I can kind of assign. I got 11, a 12, and an 11. And I'm going to put, I'm going to do wisdom as a 12. I'll say he's a wise barbarian. Maybe didn't go to school a lot. So it was 11 for intelligence. So I'm going to cross them off. 11 and another 11 I'll put for charisma, because a barbarian generally doesn't have to be particularly charismatic. Now, I put all those roles there. And you might be asking yourself, okay, we've assigned them. Oh, cross this off. What does that mean? Well, here's what it means. I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to flip to the beginning where you're talking about creating your characters. And I believe it's a little page, yes, page 13. Here's what this means. Your ability score gives you a modifier. So if I have a 15 strength, I can come over to page 13 of my edition, to the ability score and modifier table, And I roll down here and I try to find the 15. Here it is, 14 to 15. I get a +2 modifier to my strength, which normally I'd write here in this box, +2. But in this case, I'm not going to do that because we have one more thing to pick. We've picked our class, and now we can actually write it up here. There's a class and level. So I'm going to write in Barbarian. This pencil's cute, but it's hard to write with. I think this joke may be done. Barbarian and level 1. You start at level 1. Okay, so we'll put Barbarian 1. So up on class and level, I wrote that in there. Now we don't know what our race is. And this is important because we have our ability rolls right here. We've picked our class, Barbarian, and we've assigned our ability rolls based on what's best for that class, right? And it's on our sheet. Now we have to pick what race we are. This is important because if you go over here to page 12, you see there's this ability score summary. And if you look down through here, it tells you on strength, if you pick certain races, you will get certain bonuses. If the one rule is if you pick human, you get a +1 to all of your bonuses. So if you pick human, you automatically will go through here. And instead of this being 15, it becomes 16. And this one, instead of dexterity 14, it becomes 15. Constitution becomes 16. And that's good because look, that moves you from a 15 on some of these to a 16, which gives you a +3 modifier. So humans are the easiest to make because you just give yourself a +1 to all of them. And there's some other options later I'll cover that are more advanced for humans. But if you become a mountain dwarf, instead of getting a +1 to your strength, you would get a +2 to your strength. You wouldn't get anything for dexterity, but because you're still a dwarf, you're just a mountain dwarf, you would get a +2 to your constitution. So a barbarian would be quite beneficial to be a mountain dwarf because you'd have your primary ability of strength gets a +2 and your primary ability of constitution gets a +2. So we may do that. I think I'm going to do that. And if you go down, you see on intelligence, the dwarf, there's no dwarf on here. And then there's wisdom, there's no dwarf on here. And charisma, there is no dwarf on here. I think one of the other guys gets what? There's a mountain dwarf and a hill dwarf. But the hill dwarf must get something else. Oh, no, hill dwarf gets +1 wisdom. So let's decide to be a dwarf. And if you go to the races section, once you decide, oh, I'm going to be a dwarf, we're going to flip to the races section and find dwarf. All right, and the races section, I believe, is chapter 2. Yep, chapter 2, races. And it's alphabetical. So dwarf ends up being first. And then it's sort of alphabetical, but then at the end, they put in the less common races in non-alphabetical order at the end. So if we pick to be a dwarf, it's kind of like the class where you kind of roll through and it tells you all the special things you get. And here we are, dwarf traits. Ability score increase. This is on page 20. It says your constitution score increases by 2. So we're going to be a dwarf and get a +2 constitution. So we can write that on there. So our constitution goes from a 15 to a 17. That's why I sometimes write them off to the side. But now we have a constitution of 17. But when we go through, we see that there are 2 types of dwarves. You get all the traits from the regular dwarf, but then you pick if you're a hill dwarf or a mountain dwarf. And a hill dwarf, it says ability score increases, wisdom score increases by 1. And the mountain dwarf says ability score increase, your strength score increases by 2. We decided to be a mountain dwarf. So we're going to give our strength a +2. So we had a 15. So now we're going to have a 17. Nice. And then the race we can write in here, mountain dwarf. Boom. Oh, I just bad handwriting this thing. Okay. So now we have all our abilities. We've picked our race and our class. And so our abilities at this point are pretty much set. So we can go ahead and fill in the bonuses for them. All right, so we go back here to page 13 where it has the ability score modifiers, and we can go in and just find our bonuses. So our strength is a 17. We wrote it in a little circle. So we go here and look at our score. It's a +3. 16 to 17 is a +3. Write that nice and big because you're going to reference it during the game a lot. Next is dexterity. It's a 14. 14 to 15 ability score. It gives you a +2. Oh, I made that plus a little big. The next, this thing, I should probably get a different pencil. I'll mess that plus up again. Second plus mess up. Oh, it's gag pencil is killing me. Constitution is a 17 now. Oh, that gives us a +3. That's quite good, actually. And then the next is intelligence. We have an 11. 10 to 11, that's a +0. And I actually do write it in as a +0 instead of just 0. Just easier to know that you're not going to add anything to it. Wisdom is a 12. 12 is 13. I actually have a +1 for wisdom now. That's actually pretty good for a barbarian. And a charisma of 11, which we already figured out is a +0. Okay. There, that's the very first part of creating a character. We rolled the abilities, we modified them, or we assigned them based on what class we decided to be, the barbarian. So we gave the highest rolls to the things that were most important to that class. And then we modified them based on our race. And you can do one or the other. I mean, you can modify them based on your race, and then you can pick your class, you know, and do that kind of stuff. It can go either way. I find it easier to figure out what class I want to be. That tells me how to assign the highest numbers. And then after that, I go in and pick a race if I haven't had one in mind ahead of time. And then that'll modify it. And they sort of drive each other. If you've already picked your class and you know what abilities are the most important for that class, then that tells you, you know, which race you want to pick to get the biggest bonus for it. Or you can just pick a race that doesn't get that bonus, it gets a bonus somewhere else. The big thing about D&D is don't try to maximize your character like crazy and get the highest score of everything. Go with whatever is coolest to you, right? What's the best in your imagination you have for this character? Like, oh, he's really smart, but he's a warrior or whatever. That's fine. You make a really smart warrior. That's cool. Whatever you have in your head for your character, whatever you want it to be, just make it that. Don't try to, you know, go with just game mechanics on it. But that's it. That's the first part of making your character. And we'll move on to the next part, which is going to be filling in the other parts of your character that are useful during the game, such as the saving throws and the skills over here. And I'll explain in the next episode what drives that and what I always do at this point, what I always do first before I continue on with making the character. Okay, there we go.